it's more wholesome than what you're watching now. Just click it. No need to watch this. Yeah, Bulhu meaning say God. I don't know the name of the group, but I know they're in Pakistan, which is, I'm here in India. So they're just across the imaginary line drawn on a map by the British, per the advice of a boy who went to Cambridge. Okay, he was a grown man, but still. Yes, so this is Meccan Revelations, in which we read Meccan Revelations by Ibn al-Arabi. But first, I'm going to need a little bit of the old hair of the dog, if you know what I'm saying. Actually, the dog that bit me was whiskey. It was a whiskey called American Pride, made here in India. Ironic, eh? Did you know that back in Ibn Arabi's day, wine was a major export or the major export from Europe to the Arab world, meaning everything from Spain to India and beyond. The Arabian world, the world that was conquered by the proper Arabs in Saudi, well, it wasn't Saudi Arabia at the time, but Arabia. Yeah, so you might be thinking, of course they were importing wine. They were growing, all the vineyards were on the northern side of the Mediterranean. And as you've mentioned, Gwydion, there was a substantial minority of Eastern Orthodox Christians who would need wine for their Sunday Mass, as well as Jewish folks who would use it on Shabbat. And yes, that's true, but also, even though it was not halal, you could go get a doctor's note in most caliphates and have medicinal wine. And you could also, if you were a person of means, bribe a local doctor, or if you knew someone, a trade of some kind, get yourself a prescription, and you've got yourself a drinking habit, even though it's not halal. So now you know. Interesting stuff going on back then. A little reminiscent of the old medicinal marijuana days in the U.S. Let's see. Cheers. Sangre Christi. That reminds me. Yeah, that's good. My wife and I were invited to a santari, not santeria, that's different. A santari is the name given here in Goa to the practice of taking a statue from the local Roman Catholic Church and passing it from household to household, and each household gets it for 24 hours, from 7 p.m. one night until 7 p.m. the next night. And it's in celebration of the day that Mary went to see her cousin Elizabeth. I know, how do we have all these British names in the Middle East 2,000 years ago? But it was Miriam or something like that. And I don't know the ancient form of Elizabeth. But the point is, it was when she went to see her cousin, who was the mother of John the Baptist, or Yohanan the Baptist, or Johann, I don't know how to pronounce Hebrew, 2,000 years ago, or Aramaic for that matter. I'll have to ask Mel Gibson. Kidding. It's a reference to that movie he made. Terrible movie. Anyway, what was I talking about? Yeah, they invited us. It was really nice to meet the extended family and the neighbors finally. We've been living here for a while. And yeah, it was very nice. Anyway, it was the rosary in Konkani. Apparently, a generation ago, they were doing it in Latin, but now they do it in Konkani. The whole Vatican II thing. Shall I get to the esoteric Islam? Yes? The Sufism, that's what you're here for. Is it? What are you here for? And by the way, I apologize if you're offended that there is a clearly Chinese symbol on this Tibetan symbol. I mean well. I don't mean to offend anyone. Anyway, okay, I will go ahead and get to it. The origins of the Meccan Revelations and their contrast with other writings of Ibn Arabi. I will try this with my actual eyes first. The inspirations that gave rise to the Meccan Revelations, as its title suggests, took place in the course of Ibn Arabi's first pilgrimage in 1202, that's Common Calendar, or Anno Domini, if you will, also known as 598 in the Islamic calendar. He describes those experiences in a famous passage at the beginning of the book, which has been translated and discussed by each of his recent biographers. As he explains there, quote, "The essence of what is included in this work comes from what God inspired in me while I was fulfilling my circumambulations of his temple," bracket parentheses, the Kaaba Bait Allah, end bracket parentheses, "or while I was contemplating it while seated in its holy precincts," end quote. However, the actual composition of his first complete version of this immense work, composed during a time of constant travels and the simultaneous production of dozens of other works, lasted until 1231, or 629, so from 1202 to 1231. He spent 29 years writing it. That's almost as long as I took to write, no, that's longer than I took to write The New World Empire and the Interdimensional Coffee House. All right, anyway, and a few years later, in 1233, or 632, Ibn Arabi began a revision and expansion of the text, which he finished in 1238, or 636. Shortly before his death, the complete autograph manuscript of that final version, preserved by his famous disciple, I'm going to need the magnifying glass for this one, Kunawi, something like that. I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong, survives. Ibn Arabi's assertion of a kind of divine inspiration for this work, a point on which his frequent discussions later served as a justification and inspiration for generations of later Muslim poets and creators, in fact extended to virtually all of his writings, as he has noted in another passage at the beginning of the Futuhat, parentheses I-59, don't know what that means. It must mean something, I'm sure. End parentheses, quote, "Neither this book nor my other books have been composed in the manner of ordinary books, and I do not write in the way authors normally do." End quote. Instead, he affirms more explicitly in a famous later passage, parentheses, Roman numeral 2, 456, and parentheses, quote, "I swear by God, I have not written a single letter of this book that was not in accordance with a divine, quote and quotes, dictation, end quote and quotes, bracket parentheses, imla ilahi, and bracket parentheses, a spiritual inbreathing and a, quote and quotes, casting by God, end quote and quotes, bracket parentheses, ilka rabbani, and bracket parentheses, a spiritual inbreathing and, okay, in my heart, there we go, end quote. Perhaps just as important, Ibn Arabi's remarks suggest the powerful and essentially unique and inimitable ways in which his distinctive language and rhetoric in this work so closely parallels the deeper structures of the Quran. Despite the multitude of his later learned and artistic followers and interpreters, no one has really attempted any sort of detailed imitation of that distinctive Arabic literary style, which remains as unique in its own way as the equally inimitable Quran-inspired structures of Rumi and Hafiz. Oh, I have to. Oh, we've got to do some Hafiz bibliomancy. What is that? Well, Bible means book. I know it sounds less interesting in Latin, but bibliomancy is the practice of turning to a random page, usually in the Bible, and reading a line. Like you can open the Bible and flip, and then poof, and then read it. I am a wall, and my breasts are like towers. And that will be the answer to whatever question is in your heart. Let me, that's from Songs of Solomon, by the way, or Song of Songs. All right, let's see. This is The Gift by Hafiz. I used to buy like 20 copies of this and give it to everyone I knew for Christmas. And this copy I purchased after my wife had an old friend from high school, or old friend from Bihar, a Muslim woman who brought her sister and her friends, and her younger sister came in and saw my Buddhist statues and were asking about, what is this? Oh, okay, so Lord Buddha, okay, so he taught about this, right, okay, so who's this? I'm like, that's Padmasambhava, and she's like, who's he? And I'm explaining, and she's like, wow, okay. And then, so you've got Judaism, you've got the Tanakh, you've got all this Hinduism, you've got all this Christianity, you've got all this Buddhism. Do you have any books about the Prophet? And I'm like, oh, well, I've got The Gift by Hafiz, Sufi, Sufis? And they're like, I've heard of them. And I'm like, all right. I've got Meccan Revelations, Ibn al-Arabi. I'm like, no. And so anyway, long story short, I gave the younger woman my previous copy of this. And as soon as they left, I hopped on Amazon and ordered a new copy. So that's my practice, is I keep a copy of this book until the time comes that I give it away, because it's The Gift by Hafiz. What gift is Hafiz going to give us today? A poem called Until. I think we are frightened every moment of our lives until we know him. The Gift by Hafiz. Since maybe I don't know you, you might have to get yourself a copy of this. You can go on Amazon, just search for The Gift, Hafiz, Hafiz. So, they mentioned him, so we had to do it. It had to be done. So, continuing, where were we? I don't know. We were when they mentioned Hafiz. Right, here we go. If the experience and practice of centuries of assiduous and admiring readers lends a certain external, quote, authority, end quote, to Ibn Arabi's assertions in this domain, this does not at all mean that his books closely resemble each other. Right. Neither do mine, since we're on the subject. I'm always giving a little plug. I think that, earlier, I'm going to go back in time, and since I don't know what I would have pointed to, because I don't have any, I have a playlist that's called the Multiverse Cartographer, but it's not very impressive in the beginning of the playlist, so I think what I will have done, retroactively, what I will in the future do for that link that I pointed at earlier when I said the New World Empire and the Interdimensional Coffee House, is point to a playlist of my books. So you can have checked that out. Or if you're on your desktop, just expand the description of the episode and then scroll down a little and you'll see you'll see the link down there. It'll say, I don't know, Edwards Books or something like that, right? All right. Buy some if you want to. No, at the very least, what those videos are is usually me reciting from my book, so you get it for free. But if you really like one of the passages, you can see what book it's from and get that book. There's links in the video descriptions of those videos. Right. In particular, readers approaching the Meccan Revelations after having studied Ibn Arabi's Basils of Wisdom, or Fusus al-Hakim, and the many traditions of later Islamic (parentheses) and more recent Western (end parentheses) commentary on them, as we once did, will immediately feel that they are discovering a new continent. The essential guiding ideas are, of course, the same, but here they are expressed with a constant, careful, vivid, and enthralling attention to the, quote, living, end quote, phenomenology and experiential roots, including, above all, a constant reference to the words and practices of Islamic revelation, underlying the typically ontological and metaphysical formulae of the Fusus tradition. What is often, quote, abstract, end quote, or schematic in the highly compressed language of the Basils of Wisdom is expressed here with a profusion of immediate, compelling, experiential illustrations. From Ibn Arabi's own spiritual life, the experiences of his friends and associates, of earlier Sufis, and the Prophet and companions. The Prophet and companions, all right. Yes. All of these facets highlight the focus of the Futuhat on the living process and ends of spiritual realization, which is equally evident in the specific character of its language and structure discussed in the following sections. Excuse me. These distinctive facets of the Meccan Revelations, in contrast with the Fusus and its interpreters, help to explain certain of the criteria that guided the selection of chapters and topics for this anthology. Ample treatment is given to illustrations of the autobiographical dimensions of the Futuhat, its elaborate phenomenology of spiritual experience and realization, and its constant reference to the inspiration of the equally indispensable metaphysical and practical dimensions of Islamic revelation. Wow, that's a mouthful. A final distinctive characteristic of the Futuhat in the context of Ibn Arabi's own writings is the relatively discursive and comprehensive explanatory prose of most of the chapters. A quality that is only apparent, one must admit, when compared with the extremely elusive, poetic, and mysteriously symbolic discourse that is more typical of the earlier writings from his North African and Andalusian period. So, sorry, I just washed my hair. So there's a new section starting now, but I'm not going to be a stickler, I'll say that, because it's just better than saying a Nazi or Gestapo or whatever. Why go there when you're just talking about being strict about something? Normally these episodes are half-hour long. But I'm going to go ahead and let this one be a little shorter. However, I will read a little more, because that one was very short. They're not normally that short. Some of them are. All right. The Quintessence of Loneliness by Hafiz. I am like a heroin addict in my longing for a sublime state, for that grounding of conscious nothing where the rose ever blooms. Oh, the friend has done me a great favor and has so thoroughly ruined my life. What else would you expect seeing God would do? Out of the ashes of this broken frame, there is a noble rising sun pining for death, because since we first met, beloved, I have become a foreigner to every world except that one in which there is only you, or me. Now that the heart has held that which can never be touched, my subsistence is a blessed desolation, and from that I cry for more loneliness. I am lonely. I am so lonely, dear beloved, for the quintessence of loneliness. For what is more alone than God? Hafiz, what is more pure and alone, magnificently sovereign than God? Until next time.